You're listening to Retail Disrupted, a podcast that explores the latest industry developments and the trends that will shape how we shop in the future. I'm your host, Natalie Berg. Hello, we are live at the Manhattan Exchange here in Cannes. This is the annual European event from Manhattan Associates, where we get to hear all the latest in supply chain trends and insights. And this year, we get to do it in a pretty fabulous location. Joining me on the podcast today is Ben Silito, journalist and editor of Green Retail World. Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Natalie. Good to be here.
Now, I know a lot of my listeners will know you, Ben, but perhaps you can kick us off with a few words about yourself and what you're up to these days.
Yeah, sure. Keeping myself busy, working for various retail trade titles as a freelancer, covering technology, sustainability, pretty much the intersection where those two big themes meet. 3 years ago, 2020, I launched Green Retail World, which is basically a platform to monitor retail's green agenda and how retailers are putting in the effort to go greener, focus on sustainability and sort of move in the right direction. Lo and behold, it's been a really interesting 3 years because there's loads going on in that space at the moment.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I think we're going to talk about sustainability in a little bit more detail later on the podcast. Let's get your thoughts, Ben. We have just finished the first day of Manhattan Exchange. We've seen a whole host of big retailers and brands descend on the south of France to talk retail and to talk supply chain, customer experience. Day one is literally just ended about sort of 20 minutes ago, and I'm curious to get your reaction. Did anything in particular stand out for you?
Well, firstly, Natalie, the venue of Cannes has been a special treat. Must admit, can't ignore that, can we? If there's a supply chain conference going on, it's got to be somewhere, right? So make it sunny south of France coast.
Although I think we found the only windowless room in this hotel. So.
It is true. You wouldn't tell what the weather conditions are outside based on where we are right now, but it's there. I know. I took a walk down the promenade just a moment ago. Really, really interesting. I love these kind of events to hear what retailers are up to in the field. You get a real good insight. And what was fascinating for me today was supply chain director of JD Sports, Jason Cox, was speaking, and it's very rare for JD Sports to talk in public. So we got a whole lowdown on what they're doing transformation-wise, moving from sort of legacy technology through to the most sophisticated stuff. 18 months, 2 years ago, started working with Manhattan, and they've built a whole new warehouse management system, whole new warehouse in Derby in the East Midlands of the UK, and they're really embracing automation, robotics, new ways of developing technology, and new ways of working. JD Sports is such a fascinating story. They've got, sorry, I keep using the word fascinating, but that's the kind of mode I'm in right now. A small company built in Bury in middle of the 20th century, late middle 20th century, and now they're a global player. It's a real UK success story, and I find what they're doing really, really interesting. Got a bit of insight into the robotics and the automation that's going on there. Decathlon as well also spoke today, and they've been on a real transformation journey, opening up dedicated e-commerce warehouses following the growth in online retail after the pandemic. Just really interesting how different companies are approaching different things.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always great to get first-hand account from a retailer as to how they're actually enabling all of this change that we're the ones talking about it, and they're the ones actually having to do it. So now on the topic of disruptive technologies, generative AI was a hot topic as it is at the moment. And it was interesting, I thought, to hear from Manhattan CEO Eddie Capel, who really illustrated the potential of generative AI, specifically in a warehouse setting. And he talked about how using real-time language-based interactions can help you to quickly diagnose and resolve everyday issues, and put up a couple of interesting slides, which I tweeted about earlier. So for example, if you're in a warehouse and you want to quickly know who your 3 best packers are that are currently assigned to picking, it will instantly give you that answer. Something that would have taken, minutes, hours, days. I mean, who knows? So just curious to get your thoughts on generative AI and how you see that impacting retail.
That story stood out to me as well. Really interesting. They're working on some really interesting generative AI deployments, aren't they? In Manhattan Towers, all very much in prototype mode at the moment, but hoping that they'll get it out in due course. I think you can be blown away with the Gen AI topic. Everyone's talking about it at the moment. Everyone's wondering what the future holds with it. Sometimes you can get a bit carried away and start thinking about robots taking over the world. This may be moving towards a dystopian vision, but from what I can see from a retail perspective is Gen AI is going to really make a difference in terms of some workforce management issues. So you highlighted, as Eddie did, what could be done in the warehouse, speeding up decision making, optimizing factory floor space, just basically finding the right resource for the right work at the right time. And I think that's going to have a massive impact there for sure. But yeah, likewise, I've had loads of conversations with retailers and suppliers lately about how they might deploy it on the shop floor as well, where people can either use it to answer a customer's question, which is obviously going to be very useful and positive for the customer experience, but at the same time, speed up HR issues. Sometimes you're looking to take some holiday and you don't know what the latest internal document says about this. If retailers can make all these systems talk to each other and use Gen AI to access it, then retail staff can just ask a question and they'll get their answer. Not even at the touch of a button. Just they just need to ask it, and voice recognition. So I think that's where it's going to have a massive issue, a massive impact. It's not necessarily the crazy out there scenarios that people think about. It's those day-to-day issues where it's going to be really, really useful and just speed up operations.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And I know earlier we were talking about how, exactly as you've sort of just illustrated, this idea that AI can enable efficiencies on the back end, which also frees up staff time to focus on the more valuable customer-facing tasks. So it kind of indirectly enhances the customer experience that way. But then, as you rightly point out, it can also directly elevate the customer experience if you've got AI kind of powering and those more personalized experiences, those more personalized recommendations. For example, smart RFID-enabled fitting rooms, for example, where you might be getting changed and you want a little bit more hand-holding, or you want some recommendations about what accessories might go with this outfit. And that's where, again, I think I keep coming back to this phrase of tech-enabled human touch, but this is where both a member of staff, but also artificial intelligence can deliver you some really tailored recommendations. And I think that can be really powerful when it comes to elevating the in-store experience. So another interesting point from Manhattan, I think, they talked about this last year as well in Berlin. I know we were both at Exchange last year, and it is interesting to hear how it's progressing, this whole idea of giving customers greater control post-purchase. And Brian Kinsella from Manhattan gave some really specific examples of how they're giving control to customers. So, for example, after submitting an order, shoppers can change their shipping address. They can update quantities. They can, if they're doing click and collect, they can extend the pickup window, or let the retailer know when they're turning up, and physically where they're parked if it's curbside pickup. And also, they can even cancel an order, which seems a little bit counterintuitive at first, because you think, why would a retailer want to miss out on that sale? But of course, this is all about two things. It's about improving customer satisfaction, because if you've ordered something by mistake or you've changed your mind, you want to be able to, to address that quickly. But of course, it also crucially reduces return rates, which I know is a huge topic in retail right now. And I guess just curious to get your thoughts, Ben. Do you think that we'll see more retailers giving customers greater control over fulfillment?
Big hot topic again, isn't it? I know in Berlin in 2022, that was something I wrote a lot about following the event. how if you can cut down on those huge returns rates that retailers are seeing, that's one way of just improving efficiencies, improving your cost structure, and also, as we'll get to later, improving your environmental footprint as well. So yeah, I was really keen to talk about this because it caught my eye in the early morning sessions. And it's something I've actually spoken about on a personal basis with my wife as well. You know, sometimes shoppers, like she's a great example of a modern shopper, will buy lots and lots of things in the morning and sometimes forget what she's ordered, and it will come through in the week. And she has said in the past, actually maybe we didn't need that, and it's gone back as a return. So that kind of second option to check whether you do actually want to buy something is actually quite useful for consumers as well, because we live in busy lives, and you've got to get a few things, so you buy lots, but it's only later you realise maybe you didn't need them all, and then that whole returns process starts. So returns process is painful for for retailers, expensive for retailers, not so good for the planet either, but it's also pretty painful for consumers. They don't really want to get involved in the returns process. They just use it because that option is there. So anything that can try and cancel that process out has got to be a good thing for sure.
Definitely. You're right. It's in everyone's interest to get it right. The customer doesn't want to deal with returns. The retailer doesn't want to deal with returns. So it's, it is interesting. But also, I guess, just thinking about the other side of this. So yes, it would be good to give customers the opportunity to cancel an item. But also, I ordered something from Sephora in the week, and I had a discount code, and it was my birthday, so I had another discount code. And anyway, I did my full order, and then I forgot there was one thing that I wanted to add to my basket. But I thought, well, you know what? I'm now not going to add that, because then I would have to pay a delivery fee, because it didn't meet the minimum delivery threshold. So I didn't buy it. And if I was in a store, of course, I would have just walked back into the store and picked it up. So again, I think great to see how technology is sort of keeping up with evolving customer expectations.
Absolutely. And just to add to that point, historically, Manhattan's been warehouse management system provider, but it's, as lots of the senior team alluded to this week, they're getting closer and closer to the customer. And I think any technology company, no matter where they sit in the supply chain, needs to think about the end consumer more and more and more, because ultimately that's what we're making all these decisions for. Really refreshing to see, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to switch gears now and talk about the Manhattan 2023 Omnichannel White Paper, which was just released earlier today. It's called Redefining Retail: What's Next for Shoppers and Retailers. I'm going to post links to it in the show notes. It's already on Manhattan's website. It's on your website, Ben, Green Retail World, and it's on my website, NBK Retail. I'm really excited to share with you some of the key findings from this year's research. This is the second year in a row that I worked with Manhattan on this project. It's a global study of 6,000 consumers and nearly 1,200 retailers. I think it's a really unique opportunity to take the pulse of both the consumer and the industry, and then to identify any disconnects in terms of customer expectations and retailer capabilities. This research really validated my thoughts on retail, and more specifically where I see retail heading. So we crunched a lot of data and then identified 3 key trends. So I'm just going to quickly run through the first couple of trends because they're linked. So the first trend is the evolving role of the store associate. And again, if anyone who's listened to me on the podcast before, you know how strongly I feel about this idea of tech-enabled human touch, and how, when armed with the right technology, store associates have the power to not only problem solve, but also really elevate and personalize the customer experience. So this really came through in the research. Consumers are looking to store associates for knowledge to help them with pain points and cut friction, whether that's helping them to check out on the spot with a mobile POS device, or finding a product on the shelf, or if that product is out of stock, to reorder that item and then have it delivered to your home or another store, or whatever's convenient for the customer. But at the same time, we're seeing this democratization of white glove service. Again, something you've heard me say before. And it's really interesting how, again, tech can help to really enable that experience for the customer. And also, as we look to the future, how AI can really play a role in delivering that more personalized experience. And, just the whole idea of clienteling more generally, I think, is going to become even more relevant and even more powerful. So that's the first one. Very briefly, the second one is around the digital store. So we've called it Digital Store 2.0 because as we've all witnessed, the pandemic has acted as a phenomenal catalyst for digital transformation. And I think retailers have made so much progress just in the past 3 or 4 years around progressing their store digitization efforts. And this really came through in the research. So those are the two first trends. And again, they're linked because it's all about digitizing the physical space and equipping your staff with the right digital tools in that physical space to offer a superior customer experience. But Ben, I have you here. You are the editor of Green Retail World. And so I'm really keen to get your thoughts on the final trend that we identified, which is the deprioritization of green purchases. So the research showed that affordability concerns are actually hindering the shift to sustainable shopping. 45% of consumers said that they still consider sustainability a top or important factor when choosing where to shop. But this is down slightly on the 50% who agreed with that statement last year. So Ben, I'm curious to get your views. Do you think that in the current climate, frugality trumps sustainability?
I disagree, actually. I think that in the main, retailers are still actively progressing their ESG greener retailing strategies, finding new initiatives to become more circular, especially in that fashion space. There's lots of, the whole pre-loved movement is massive at the moment, and most retailers are playing in that space in some way, trying to find ways to bring back what they've sent out to the world and finding a suitable new home for it, or recycling it in a responsible way. Obviously, I'd need to track all those lorries back to make sure that all these retailers are doing what they say they're doing. But but I feel like the incentive is there, and there's a whole kind of demand and some movement behind that circular economy, which I think is really interesting. So the stats you say about consumers deprioritizing sustainability, I feel like that needs to be put into context. We're living in the biggest cost of living crisis in generations, so clearly costs and getting more for less is going to be a focus for consumers right now, just due to general affordability concerns. So I don't think it's any surprise that people are looking for low cost over sustainability, as the research shows. At the same time, I don't think that, if you ask the consumer, do you want sustainable products? Do you want us as a retailer to deliver to you in a sustainable way? Of course, they're going to say yes. So I think it's incumbent upon the retailers themselves to just keep finding ways, just keep trying to be more efficient, keep making sure that they're transparent in their supply chain and providing all the information possible to customers so that they can make informed decisions. And hopefully that list of priorities will change once again once we sort of get into hopefully less of an inflationary environment. Generally very encouraged. I'm tracking it and really, really positive. Can I give one example quickly?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was at the Currys Repair Centre a few weeks ago, where this is circular economy in action. They've realised they can make money from spare parts, from repairing, rather than just getting rid of returns and damaged goods. They're really sort of pushing into making this a big part of their service offering. So they've noticed that they can save lots of money by taking parts of technology that otherwise would end up in landfill and then using that in repairs of other goods. They're basically building a whole new division behind it. And there's so many other examples. Currys is just one example of what many retailers are doing at the moment. So generally very positive about this, despite that seeming deprioritization. I can't say that word.
It's a hard word.
Prioritization in consumers' thinking.
Yeah. So do you think it's just a blip then, and that actually, once consumers are feeling a little bit more flush, then they'll be in a position to make those greener purchases and more just generally be a bit more environmentally conscious and aware in their shopping habits.
I think so, and I think it's important that retailers are finding good economical models of providing greener options, because historically, yes, sustainability things have been a bit more expensive, but I think more and more retailers are realising that it doesn't have to be that way, and they're becoming quite creative and clever in their thinking, and I, for one, am pleased to see that. Obviously, lots of work to do, but very encouraging steps.
Do you think that do you think that consumers think that the onus should be on the retailer and that they should still, to your point about, yes, consumers want to behave in a more, mindful way, but they also want convenience. And I think something that came up a lot over the past 12 hours has been that there is this disconnect between what people say they want and then what they go and actually do. So yeah, just curious to get your thoughts.
I mean, that disconnect is absolutely true, isn't it? And all of the surveys you see where it's 95% of consumers want to shop sustainably. We've maybe not seen that so much in the last 12 months, 24 months, but that's what we were starting to hear, relatively recently. People are obviously going to say yes to that specific question, but it's all in the nuance, isn't it? I think it's... I do think retailers have got a responsibility. They are big producers of goods, big manufacturers of goods. They are using raw materials and putting it out to the world. And I think increasingly they're going to be under pressure, and legislation will be coming in and is coming in for them to, deal with those products as they are come to the end of their life. It's a huge topic, the whole circular economy. But I think retailers have their eyes open to it, and the clever ones are going to find ways of making it a commercially viable part of their business as well.
Yeah, and I guess often financial sustainability goes hand in hand with environmental sustainability, and I know that's certainly been a theme of the first day of the show, that it's no secret that not in every aspect of business, but in a lot of cases, that if you're able to operate in a more leaner, more efficiency driven way, you're able to cut costs, and you're also able to cut emissions as well. If we're thinking about things like e-commerce deliveries. In fact, there was some interesting an interesting stat that came out of the research where we asked consumers around the globe, so it'll vary greatly by market, but we asked consumers to rate their most important delivery consideration. And you probably won't be surprised with the findings. Over half, so 52%, said cost was the most important consideration. And the next most common one was length of time to deliver, because we want everything, we want it now. But only 8% of consumers ranked the impact on the environment as the most important delivery consideration. And I guess it's in the wording, isn't it? Because it's still, I think, pretty niche for people to think that, to rate that as number one. I think generally we all want to be more responsible and make greener decisions, but would we rank the impact on the environment above cost or convenience? I don't think so. I don't know if we ever will. I mean, I think again, this is probably down to the retailer to be able to do both those things.
Yeah, I think you're right, isn't it? And it's not an easy fix, because if it was, we wouldn't be talking about this as such an issue. I kind of maybe giving you a bit of a politician's answer, Natalie, but the one thing that struck me in the exchange sessions today, someone mentioned the advent of technology. I think it was Eddie, actually, in his session, and he described how the computer has changed over time, to the point where mobile touchscreens and now incoming AI situation, that whole advent of technology. What really frustrates me is that with that innovative thinking in the tech world, why haven't we been able to fast track some of the environmental issues that we face? It was some food for thought from the sessions today. I think so many clever minds pushing technology frontiers, but let's try and push that towards sustainability as well. But you're right, the whole making operations more efficient and more transparent is the first step towards sustainability, and most companies have realised that now. Not all, but as soon as you start getting that visibility and you start doing the things you're doing already better, then you're away. And I think it snowballs from there.
Yeah, and I guess on the topic of transparency from a customer's point of view, customers today are hyper informed. We have access to everything at our fingertips when it comes to pricing information, product reviews, ratings, everything, but not when it comes to sustainability. So I'm just curious, because we're so ubiquitously connected, we're armed with, as I said, our personal shopping companions. And I think our mobile phones have really just become an extension of ourselves. So what is stopping retailers? Do you think that ultimately it's don't get me wrong, retailers have made progress, and it's been like this for a long time in like the UK online grocers, for example, where you can choose that little green van for green delivery. But I think if it doesn't really impact you, you might feel a little bit better by selecting that choice. But I don't know. I just wonder if, just kind of thinking out loud here, I wonder if retailers need to be thinking, particularly for those consumers who are, and again, let's face it, it is those younger consumers who really care. I'm generalizing, but that definitely came out in the research, that those younger consumers really care about making those mindful choices and want to shop with retailers whose values reflect their own. They want retailers with purpose. And I don't think retailers can hide anymore. So I'm just curious, like, could you see a situation, for example, where if a shopper selects no rush delivery, then they get some green loyalty points? Or is there, how can retailers think outside the box and try to influence the consumer behavior they want to see?
I think those kind of points for thinking greener do exist. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head now because you put me on the spot, but there are small examples of that. I think this whole, I think we're still at such a nascent stage of businesses' sustainability journey, and businesses realising that they need to be greener and that it can pay to be greener as well. But I feel like you're going to have to be a very brave retailer to install and deploy those greener rewards and sort of elevate those greener options, because if it doesn't work and the competitors don't follow you, then you're going to lose business. It almost needs the whole industry to go.
It needs scale.
Yeah, it needs to go together with this kind of thing. And I guess legislation, regulation will force that. So some of the retailers I talk to, it's bizarre. You hear them saying that they need the regulation. They're asking for legislation, which seems unheard of, really. But they need it as a framework to move towards what is seemingly a better direction. Yeah,
well, because also there's a lot of greenwashing still, right? So it's one thing if you genuinely are offering something green or a green service, but there's a lot of companies out there that are claiming to. And from a customer's point of view, it can, as a customer myself, I think it can be hard to kind of decipher, what's the definition of organic, or what's, without some kind of, without a framework in place that's consistent across retailers.
Absolutely. Another massive issue. Could do a whole podcast on this itself, I think. But I think what the legislation coming over the hill will do, and what things like the Competition and Markets Authority and Advertising Standards Authority are doing, and putting pressure on retailers not to say things they can't back up, that's forcing them to know their supply chains better, get a better understanding, more transparency of what's going on across their whole operations, so that when they do make a claim, it's authentic. It's clear that it's authentic. So I think lots of the direction of travel at the moment is going to naturally push retailers into being more sustainable naturally, and also will mean they don't have to greenwash, and that's going to be a good thing.
Green.
That's going to be a good thing for everyone. Yeah, I like to say greener rather than green, because everything leaves a footprint, right?
True. Great. Well, listen, Ben, I think that brings us to a really nice close. Thanks so much for joining me. It's been really fun to talk all things sustainability and unpack some of the insights from today's show. And to our listeners, I hope we were able to bring a little flavor of the conference to you. See you next time. Thank you for listening to Retail Disrupted. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the podcast, please leave a rating or review or share it with others. It really makes a difference.